All right, Adam, we are here for senior week for the Buffs, and maybe a celebratory mood a little bit in that regard, but of course, obviously coming off a fifth straight loss, this team's got some things to figure out.
Yeah, it's tough to keep coming back these Mondays to provide some analysis because during a losing streak, even we kind of get worn down, right?
Right.
And we're dealing with the fans all week, and I understand their frustration. I'm certainly not blaming them for having that. It wears on you after a while, but I've seen a few people say they want to boycott because they want to send a message to the administration here that they're not supporting this coaching staff. As Doug Rippey put out there, a PSA on Twitter, just that's the wrong message to send, especially with it being senior day.
Right.
Rick George is going to do what he's going to do. I don't think how many fans are in Folsom Field on Saturday is going to affect his decision with his coaching staff, one way or the other.
Absolutely agree. I mean, Rick George is very in tune with what's going on here. His decision, if it's not made already, is not going to be determined by however many fans show up. He's very in tune with what's going on. So yeah, I mean, I would back Doug Rippey and encourage fans, don't boycott this team because of that. If you're planning on coming to the game, if you're thinking about coming to the game, come support these guys. I mean, if anything else, if you love the Buffs, I mean, I would say, not to sound too much like a PR guy for the Buffs, but
right.
you know, I mean, come out and support these kids. I mean, they deserve it. I think that this group is still fighting hard. I think this is a group that is still trying its best to win. I think last year's group a little bit had kind of mailed it in towards the end, especially after the ASU game. I don't think this group has done that, and I think that from my perspective, I think they deserve the fan support.
Absolutely. There's going to be 14 Colorado players on scholarship that will be playing in the last football game. Mm-hmm. Guys like Evan Worthington, Rick Gamboa, Juwan Winfrey, a lot of guys that have put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. It's not just on game day. We see how much these kids work throughout a year. And some of them might have struggled at times in their career, but just thinking about all the work they've put into this program. And, Laviska Shenault, he's got to come back next year, but there's only so many opportunities for this fan base to actually watch him play football before he's on to the NFL. So, you got to look at some of the positives, and, as disappointing as the season's been, you still have that bowl eligibility possibility if you get one more win. And, this is a program, the previous 12 years has only gone to one bowl game.
Right.
So no matter what, unless they win the last two, there might be some fans that are pleased with that, but by and large, this fan base is going to be frustrated going in the offseason. But at least if you got to the bowl game, it would give you something that we haven't seen a whole lot. I've spent too much time around family, around the holidays in recent years. I want to get out and cover a bowl game.
You say you don't like your family?
I love them, but hey, I mean, come on. I want to cover a bowl game.
I agree with you. And, to your point with Shenault, I mean, they have, 6 home games next year, maybe 7. I can't remember the schedule off the top of my head, but 7 with the game in Denver. And with this one, you've got maybe 8 chances to see Laviska Shenault because I think he's probably a guy that leaves early. So, I mean, you could have less than 10 chances to see this kid play live again, and if nothing else, take that opportunity. I mean, and not just him. I mean, I think Steven Montez is he's well on his way to having a really good career here. Guys like that. You mentioned Gamboa, Worthington, guys like that, and really, I second your thoughts that as frustrating as it is right now, you have a chance to get to a bowl for the second time in 12 years. It doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, and Utah comes in here, and unfortunately for them, the injury bug has bit them as well. They lose Tyler Huntley and Zach Moss for the rest of the season. Now I was kind of surprised. I thought Oregon would take advantage of that situation, but Utah, I mean, they play well in the trenches, and if you do that, you have a chance to play football. So Colorado has a chance to win this game, but they're still 7.5-point favorites going into this contest.
I think the thing that gives we'll get more into this later in the week as we preview it, but the thing that I think should give CU fans hope is that Utah always screws something up. They've got a chance to play for the South here. Yeah. They kind of always mess it up, don't they?
And how did that happen in 2011?
Right.
They had the Pac-12 South on the line. A Colorado team that had won 2 games all year comes in there and upsets them.
Comes into Salt Lake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're right.
And that one was, they had the South on the line only because USC was ineligible for it that year, but still, they had it. This one, they could win the South outright, but they always kind of screw it up. And so, I think that should give CU fans some hope. But just real quick, going back to the game the other day, obviously 31-7, not a pretty game, but we talked about it right after the game. But any other thoughts you've had since then?
Well, we talked about a week ago that the secondary might have the pieces to improve as the season went along, and we saw that in that football game. Maybe the stats don't really bear that out, but when you take into consideration that Minshew's thrown for over 400 in a bunch of games this year, it was actually a pretty respectable performance there. So that's one group that I was a little bit encouraged by there. And yeah, I mean, defensively, they played well enough. They were hung out to dry in that football game. You can't just keep going 3 and out and not get the ball on the other side of the 50-yard line for extended periods of time and expect a defense against that type of offense to play any better than they did.
I've seen fans, obviously there's a lot of angry fans, they always want to fire everybody, but one of the guys that I keep hearing about, oh, you got to fire DJ Elliott. I think he's been one of their better coaches this year, to be honest with you. I mean, outside of 6 quarters, I think the defense has been pretty good, and I thought they did a great job the other day, really bouncing back from a couple of bad games, playing well. Like you mentioned, the defensive backs. I thought Aaron Maddox and Darian Rakestraw looked pretty good the other day as a combo back there. So, overall, there were some good signs, but offensively, they've got to get going.
How did they do that?
I don't know.
That's the big question. I mean, if Laviska Shenault, as Mac McIntyre mentioned, that he was a little bit rusty in that game. If he breaks that rust off, maybe that's a big deal. Getting Katie Nixon and Jay McIntyre would help as well. But when the O-line plays the way it has this year, your ceiling as an offense is considerably lower, and that's been kind of the reoccurring theme all year.
Well, it's really, we've kind of mentioned it in the past, but your margin for error is so thin. And even with the way the offensive line is playing, there have been opportunities to make big plays. They just haven't taken advantage of it. You've got to take advantage of it because consistently you're not going to get the opportunities to have those long, sustained drives, I don't think. But you've got to take advantage of the open shots you have. Like Stephen had Juwann Winfrey wide open for potentially a touchdown the other day and just too far out in front of him and ends up not being a catch. That's a big one.
Yeah. Colorado fans don't want to hear this, but part of just a football fan of me really enjoyed watching Washington State's offensive line.
Yeah.
That group just put up a barrier. You couldn't penetrate through that. It was because we haven't seen that a whole lot this year covering Colorado. That was maybe the most impressive thing to me in that whole football game.
Yeah, I honestly think that Washington State's one of the more underrated stories in the country this season. And to me, Mike Leach might be the National Coach of the Year with what he's done after kind of a tumultuous offseason up there in Pullman. But like you said, CU fans don't want to hear that right now. But I think that's a team that is dialed in right now, and they look like they could be the Pac-12 champions. So we'll see.
Yep.
So that'll do it for us today. We'll be back later on this week to preview the game against Utah.